Okay, so a huge story finally reached a conclusion, at least in court. A 7-year national saga, really. July 24th, 2025, five former members of Canada's 2018 World Junior Team acquitted of sexual assault charges in London, Ontario.
Yeah, really long road to get to that point.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we really want to unpack the judge's reasoning, how she got to that verdict. We'll trace the turbulent path that led us here.
And look at the implications,
Yeah.
right? For consent, celebrity, the justice system itself, it touches on so much.
It really does. So let's get into it. The verdict itself, acquittal for all five. Michael McLeod, Carter Hart, Alex Formanton, Dylan Duve, and Callan Foote.
That's right. And it wasn't just a simple acquittal. The judge, Ontario Superior Court Justice Maria Caroccia, was very explicit. She found the complainant, known as EM, just not credible or reliable.
Wow, okay. That's a really strong finding from the bench. What specifically led her there? What made her doubt the credibility?
Well, there were several key things. Intoxication was a big one. EM testified she was extremely drunk, but the judge pointed to surveillance footage.
Ah, the video evidence.
Exactly. It showed her walking, even dancing, apparently without difficulty, all while wearing high heels. And she was apparently clear enough to notice a bartender had shortchanged her earlier.
So the judge felt those actions didn't line up with the testimony of extreme impairment.
Pretty much. It suggested a level of lucidity. Then there was the language used. Justice Caroccia actually singled out the phrase, her truth.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she said basically that slogans like, believe the victim, while important maybe socially, have no place in a criminal trial. The focus has to be on objective evidence.
Okay, so the standard of proof in court versus maybe a social movement's perspective.
Right. And perhaps most importantly, there were numerous inconsistencies flagged. Differences between what EM said at trial versus what she told police earlier and what was in her civil lawsuit documents.
So multiple statements, and they didn't always match up.
Correct. And that accumulation of, discrepancies really undermined her reliability in the judge's assessment.
So with that credibility assessment forming the foundation, how did the judge then rule on the core issue of consent?
She concluded there was actual consent not vitiated by fear. Vitiated meaning like invalidated or undermined.
Right.
She noted that EM hadn't mentioned being scared in her initial police interviews. That only came up later. And the judge also cited some of EM's reported actions.
Such as?
Like walking naked into the hotel room where the players were, and apparently masturbating willingly. The judge viewed these as actions inconsistent with a lack of consent or consent given out of fear.
Okay, it paints a picture of a very detailed judgment, but this verdict didn't happen in a vacuum. It's the endpoint of this, like you said, 7-year saga.
Yeah.
It wasn't always in the news.
Not at all. The allegations surfaced back in June 2018. There were initial investigations, London police, Hockey Canada, but they were closed by February 2019. No charges. Silence, really. Until April 2022. That's when EM filed her civil lawsuit against the players and Hockey Canada. Then, just a month later, TSN broke the story that Hockey Canada had quietly settled that suit.
And that just blew things wide open, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Public outrage was immediate and intense. The federal government froze Hockey Canada's funding. There were parliamentary hearings.
I remember those. That's when the whole National Equity Fund thing came out.
Exactly. Using minor hockey registration fees to pay out settlements, including for sexual assault claims. It was catastrophic for Hockey Canada's reputation. Sponsors fled. The entire board and leadership resigned.
And all that pressure ultimately led back to the legal system.
Directly. The police investigation was reopened, Hockey Canada's investigation was reopened, and that culminated in the formal charges being laid in January 2024.
It's quite something. The public outcry forces institutional change, and then the criminal charges follow. The trial itself, though, sounded intense, conflicting narratives.
Completely. Prosecution argued consent was invalid, vitiated because of intoxication and fear. The defense, meanwhile, went hard on EM's credibility, portraying her as an active participant who maybe regretted it later and fabricated the story.
And didn't the trial itself have some procedural bumps? Juries being dismissed?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. 2 juries were dismissed for procedural reasons early on. This forced it into a judge-alone trial.
Which meant
Justice Caroccia had to provide these detailed reasons for judgment. She had to publicly lay out why she reached her conclusion, including that really critical dismantling of the complainant's credibility. A jury just delivers a verdict guilty or not guilty, no explanation needed.
So the Judge Lane trial actually resulted in a much more explicit public rationale for the acquittal.
Definitely more transparent in terms of the reasoning. And Justice Carocha kept coming back to core legal principles, the presumption of innocence, the Crown needing to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
And trial fairness seemed key too, especially regarding excluded evidence.
Absolutely critical. Some potentially significant evidence didn't make it to trial. Player statements given to Hockey Canada's initial investigation ruled inadmissible.
Why was that?
The judge found they were essentially involuntary, given under the threat of a lifetime ban from Hockey Canada if they didn't cooperate. So, potentially coerced. A text message was also excluded as hearsay.
So the judge prioritized the rules of evidence, procedural fairness, over just getting all possible information in front of her.
Precisely. She explicitly said the end cannot justify the means. It highlights that tension, right? Between protecting the integrity of the legal process and the desire to uncover every single fact.
Which, of course, leads to reactions outside the courtroom. The acquittal wasn't universally accepted.
No, far from it. Advocates expressed real anger, worried about a chilling effect that survivors might be less likely to come forward after seeing this outcome.
And for many, this trial became about more than just the specific allegations. It was seen as a trial of hockey culture.
Yeah, that narrative of entitlement, toxic masculinity, it hung over the whole thing, regardless of the legal finding of innocence, which creates this real paradox.
How so?
Well, you have society, rightly, condemning Hockey Canada's handling of the situation, the settlement, the secret fund. That led to massive institutional change. But then the criminal court, applying its strict rules, finds no crime was actually committed in that hotel room.
It's a definite disconnect. Public morality, institutional accountability versus the specific requirements of criminal proof.
Exactly. It leaves you wondering about different kinds of truth and accountability.
So where does this leave the players now? Legally acquitted, but what about their careers?
Still uncertain. The NHL has its own investigation ongoing, and crucially, they operate under a different standard of proof balance of probabilities, not beyond a reasonable doubt. And they can consider evidence excluded from the trial, like those Hockey Canada statements.
So the league could still impose suspensions or other penalties based on its own findings.
Potentially, yes. Plus, the Crown technically has 30 days to appeal the judge's verdict, though appeals are usually only on errors of law, not just disagreeing with the finding.
And what about the players versus Hockey Canada?
Well, Justice Carochia's very strong findings, actual consent, EMM, not credible, that gives the players significant legal leverage if they choose to pursue action against Hockey Canada for settling that initial civil suit, apparently without their full consent or knowledge.
This case just layers complexity upon complexity. Legal definitions, court rules, public expectation, institutional fallout. So many unresolved questions.
Absolutely.
It makes you think, doesn't it? When you consider the evidence that was excluded deliberately to ensure trial fairness, what does that tell us about the tension built into our justice system? The tension between finding the absolute complete truth and rigidly upholding procedural rights. How does that challenge what we as a society think justice really means?